is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. I'm Anais.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Gerald.
All right. It's been, what, like 3 episodes since the last time it was just us, no guests? I like when guests are here, but I guess you guys will do.
So we're not good enough for you now, eh?
Just saying.
Well, Gerald, you tried to replace me last time.
That's true. Yeah. You did try to replace.
Hey. Hey.
Also,
Did I do?
You did.
Yeah, you absolutely did.
I can't remember.
How convenient.
How old?
Well, one of the reasons why I like guests is because guests always submit really good stories. I really like today's story, which was submitted by Karina.
Yeah.
Girlfriend.
Yeah. Have we considered why do we read stories blind? What's the reason for that?
I think part of why we read stories blind is to give authors that normally wouldn't have as big of a platform, because when you're coming in with stories that you've already sort of chosen, you're going to start gravitating towards those authors who already have a platform. So I think that was the idea of just like go dig, find something, and just do it. And also because if every single episode was this story was amazing and we never had it, like, oh, that might be a little boring.
That's true. Sometimes the stinkers are still an interesting discussion.
Like 3 Friends in a Hammock. I shouldn't do this. Okay, so.
Oh, those friends in that hammock, I tell you.
Remember, one of them had big boobs and one of them did not. Okay, so.
Well, we didn't know.
My story.
Okay.
I feel better now.
But that episode of discussion is memorable because we all were struggling, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, just getting a good story that we all agree on is perhaps not the most compelling content. Much better stories.
Fantastic stories.
And I think it is better to come into a story blind, and it's more exciting as the story proposer.
But that's how Gerald realized. He started doing years of Carve magazine entries, and then you're like, you know what? They start to all feel a little bit the same after a while.
Oops.
They're all really good. Like, they're always technically good stories, but after a while, you're like, I need a different mood. I need a different vibe right now.
Well, strangely, my suggestion for this week comes from a certain magazine, but I just looked at the short bio at the top, and I rejected the one that said they completed their MFA. So I rejected that. I went for one that hasn't got an MFA. So
I want to go back into the journals that we've been sort of ignoring lately. Like the random, it's because like those small ones, but there was one like Bodega that we read from once, and we didn't really like that story very much, but there's got to be other stuff in there that we do, and I feel like we got to do that again. Like those like tiny journals. Or the little regional.
Yeah.
Okay. This week, we read The Wreck at Goat's Head by Alexandra Manglis or Manglis. It was fantastic. Well, I think it was fantastic. And that is myself. No, I'm kidding. So in the story follows Sana, who is a free diver. So it's divers who don't use any scuba equipment and just sort of train themselves to hold their breath for long periods of time, and their bodies require very little oxygen. It's a very dangerous sport. But she comes from a long line of a long matriarchal line of free divers in Greece. So she's recently lost her mother. She's diving. She has a lot of grief. Because of her grief, she's been doing longer dives, and she and her husband go to the same spots over and over ritualistically every morning. And one day she's diving at this area called Goat's Head because they found a goat skull there, and also because of a red coral. So they go into Goat's Head, and she's been there for decades, her whole life, and yet she finds for the first time a shipwreck, an ancient shipwreck. And no, it's not a shipwreck.
You skipped over some ghosts.
The ghost is now. The first ghost of the shipwreck is when she sees the primal goddess lady.
The ghosts of the jugs.
Oh, sure.
Direct her to the shipwreck.
Sure. There's like ghostly Roman jugs called amphora. Is that, am I pronounce that correctly?
Yes. Also, the American pluralization is amphoras, and we're not going to pretend to know if it's A or E at the end. Yeah.
So
I'm not going to. Well.
So those are those jugs with like that are like long and have the tiny little handles around the top. So there's like these ghostly images of that lead her to the shipwreck, and she's never so. As she's coming back up to get her camera, or we almost she's coming back up because it's time. There's a diver. She sees a female diver who's totally naked, carrying just a spear. She reaches out to her, and the diver's hand moves through Sana's body like a ghost. She comes back up, and she wants the camera to take pictures. She doesn't tell her husband that she's seen this woman because apparently the boatmen, like her husband, like, if you see the primal goddess diver, that means that you're gonna die. Sana doesn't die though, right? So anyway, so then Yorgo, that's her husband, basically is like, okay, let's go take these pictures. They're gonna get it to the Institute of Archaeology. They have a rotary phone at home. This is a detail that's relevant. Their neighbor actually has a computer. Their neighbor's daughter has a computer. They email pictures, and now all the archaeologists are coming to look at this new site. And as this is happening, she sort of, separate. I just realized, I don't know how these two parts are linked, but she's hanging out with the women of the village. And as she's like swimming and drinking and having a good time, suddenly she's like transported back in time, and she's watching when her mother was pregnant with her, talking to her grandmother.
I'm going to interject real quick, Annie.
Yeah, interject, please.
Again,
for me, this was an important part of the story because it's like, oh, weird ghostly ship thing. But then it's like, no, there's actually a ship there. It's for real. They're scientists. They're studying it. They're excavating the ship. Everyone can see it. Completely confirmed. They touch a little bit on like, well, isn't anyone curious how I've been diving in the same place for years and years and I've never seen this ship before? And like, nah. Nobody. So now it's just a normal thing.
Mysterious. Yeah, exactly.
There's a weird thing, but then it became super normal for a stretch. Mm-hmm. And now there's this ghost thing.
Right. But also remember, she's like the person who can dive the deepest in her village.
Yeah.
So there's some of that. Like, well.
Yeah, it was 300 meters down.
I thought it was 330. I thought it was 30 meters.
30 meters.
300 meters is beyond.
Hold on. I'm going because I thought that was
30
insane.
meters. There's no way it's 300 meters.
Well,
wait.
I'm within an order of magnitude of being correct.
Well, that's all right.
An order of 10.
So we're now allowed to challenge the summary. Am I getting that right? Is that okay?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay, just asking.
Summaries. Okay. So she's
only if your summary's wrong.
Yeah.
And your girlfriend suggested the story.
Okay, so she's hanging out with the women at the pier. They're all swimming and drinking. And then briefly, she's like transported back in time. She's watching her mother when her mother was pregnant with her, talking to her grandmother. Her grandmother sees her through this like ghostly time warp. Of course, this is the first but not the last time it happens in the story. Later that same evening, she wakes up and she's on her own rotary phone, but she calls her own number the way she used to do when she was younger, when she would call home to her mother, because she and her husband live in the house that she grew up in. And she calls her own phone, and then the phone rings, and then she hears her mother on the other line. And then she has a memory of when she was 8 years old, seeing her mother pick up the phone and call a person on the other end of the line, someone by a certain nickname that she only uses with her daughter. And now that she's an adult doing this ghostly phone call, the mother is using that same nickname. So she realizes she had a memory of when she was 8, of when her mother picked up a call from her future self, right?
Hashtag close time loop.
Hashtag this is Looper. So yeah, so that was fun. It went from like, are you hallucinating a little bit, to no, this is like a cyclical. We're doing time jump story here. And then yeah, I don't really know how it ends. This is a weird thing about the story. Like it's sort of like ends there. Yeah, it just ends there on their conversation where they're like, I wish we could have these ghost calls forever. And the mom's like, no, you only get minutes, which is like a reference to when they die. Right. Minutes when you die.
For the dive-ins.
Yeah. That's how it ends.
Well, because she's connected to all of her matrilineal line through this diving. That's their entire shared.
Green rotary phone.
Yeah, well, she only called her mama the green rotary phone.
Yeah, and she saw her grandmother, who saw her too. So she saw her grandma, and
Right.
she talked to Ghost Mom.
Well, because when she saw her grandmother, she said, "What did she say?" Because when she saw her grandmother, her mom was pregnant with her at that time, and her grandma said something. Yeah, I've been ready since to be a grandmother, but I'm not gonna. They said it in the Greeks. I don't know how to pronounce it. I've been ready to be a grandmother since you were in my belly. Your unborn child was already a part of me, and so a part of you, and so a part of me. So that's the whole deal, the whole line, the whole history of these apnea divers was what they were all contained within each other. Yeah.
And they all become the primal goddess late in life.
Nope.
Just Sana?
Just Sana, I think.
I don't know.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
About that. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of open for debate, but also, remember earlier in the story, Sana talks about how like her mom got even better at diving when she got old, and her grandma was even better at diving when she got old. Like there was this sort of like late life extra deep dive thing going on. I don't know if it's just Sana. Yeah. Kind of like it moves through them when they need it.
But there was like a line where it was like, I wonder if it was the grief of mourning all past generations that makes them better at diving. And she's the last of them. So she'll be the best. She has all of the grief of all of the past generations. And then, from my understanding, she then, in mourning all of her past generations at the bottom of the ocean, connects to everybody, the entire line, going all the way back. And that is how she found the shipwreck and such.
But also remember, this story predates even her own family's history. The story of
right. Well, because she transcends time.
Right. The time loop thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I think we've covered the summary. 12 minutes.
Really? Don't you think Andy should have done the summary?
Yes. Next time I'll let Andy do the summary. Okay. So, Gerald, did you like the story?
Yes.
Wow.
Excellent. Wrap up.
Yeah. We're 12 minutes in and we just finished the summary.
Yeah.
I did like the story. There was I'm not doing. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to keep your questions, but yeah, there was I was having a bit of trouble at the start to try and place the story, because I wasn't sure whether it was a fantasy story or whether they, she was a mermaid or they were mermaids or all this sort of stuff. But I'm glad it wasn't, because I got more enjoyment out of it knowing that it was real / supernatural.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned it was hard to place the story, because I feel like the story at first was very slow to reveal any facts that ground the story in any way. Like the first time you meet Yorgo, I pictured him as like just like the old boatman that like takes her out. No, it's her husband. Like that is like for some reason withheld. There's a lot of facts that are withheld early on, but what's not withheld is everything that has to do with the prime part of the story, which is the matriarchal line. The fact that her mother has recently died, and that diving is important to her family. But everything else that has to do with this story is very slowly revealed. In fact, it never even is placed in Greece. You just sort of have to figure that out on your own. It's never placed at any point in time. You've got a rotary phone on a wall next to somebody who's emailing pictures. So it's like a timeless thing going on there as well. That, for me, early on, I loved the mysterious vibe of it. Like, I don't know what I'm reading right now, but it's fine. It felt like a nice journey. I didn't, like, sometimes when an author withholds too much, you get frustrated. You feel like they're toying with you and they're just like creating mystery for the sake of creating mystery. I didn't get that here. Somehow the author was skilled enough that she told me just enough that I was curious and was okay wrapping myself up in the mantle of this mystery. I don't know if Andy would agree, though. Was that your experience?
Yeah, 100%. And like, I don't know, on my later read through of it, I feel like I can't point to anything about it, but I feel like that's the intent of the story. Like it's structured to keep you as a reader kind of on your back foot. It's like, here's this thing. It's about diving. Oh shit, some ghosts. Oh, but it's real. It's a real shipwreck. It's not a ghost shipwreck. It's real. We've got scientists. We got pictures. And then like, you're like, oh, is it a ghost story? Oh, but there's science man. So then, and it spends a lot of time on the aftermath of that to kind of ground you again. It's like this, oh, a little bit of ghost stuff. No, but for real, be in a real world. Oh, some time stuff again. So it's just...
That's called magical realism.
Yeah. But it's like, I've read magical realism that's like goofy as shit. And I'm down with it being goofy as shit. That's fine if that's what I'm reading. But it really cranks it up and dials it back on purpose. So you don't settle into any one groove. Like if I was reading a book with ghost ships, I'd be on board for ghost ships.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay.
If I'm reading a book about detailed diving stories, I'd be on board for detailed diving stories, and it's both.
Yeah. Real quick, Lisa Simpson Rules says she arrived late. What are we talking about? We're talking about The Wreck at Goat's Head by Alexandra Manglis, Greek writer. And it's a short story, not a whole book. And it's about a woman who goes diving and discovers a shipwreck that you think is a ghost ship is real. And then she sees her dead grandmother and her dead mother. That's the shortest summary.
Yeah, you should have done that one.
Yeah, that should have been our original one. So Andy, you were sort of talking about the experience of the first time that you start to see that sort of magical realist twist. That's, oh, it's a ghost ship. There's a sort of plausible deniability. She's grief-stricken. She might be hallucinating.
She's oxygen deprived for minutes.
She's oxygen deprived. She's pushing her bodies to its limits. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's real. Okay.
Yeah, she actually got the pictures. Like,
But then does that make you feel that then that final conversation where, because it happens again, where she sees her grandmother while she's drinking. Oh, alcohol. She's drinking, right. And then, she talks to her mom on the phone. She has a memory of her mom talking to someone on the phone using a very particular nickname when she was 8 years old. So is it real again? I love that.
I feel like that made it like, yeah, it's grounded, but it's grounded in you got magic time travel powers.
Yeah, exactly.
This very specific axis of time travel.
Right. But without ever calling it powers, because it's not that kind of a story.
Right.
So, Gerald, so we have all these magical realist turns, and Gerald early on years ago in the podcast used to resist magical realist stuff, but has since come around. Yeah. How was the experience of reading the magical realist elements for you?
Yeah, because some of the magical realism that we read falls into Andy's category as weird as shit, and which that is now a pucker category for magical realism, and I think that grounding, and you're right, Annie. So I agree with you when you said you weren't sure at the start what was happening. As I say, that I wasn't sure whether it was real or whether it was some sort of fantasy thing, and there's, I was dead certain she was going to die because she was going to stay down too long. I was dead certain the wreck was not going to be real and it was going to be imagined it. So I really loved the way that the author straddled the real world and the magical world. And you just have to accept that strange stuff is happening, and she's having maybe hallucinations, but then she didn't hallucinate the wreck at the bottom of the ocean. So the 300 meters down ocean. So sorry, Andy. So
it's within the order of magnitude, the right answer.
Order of magnitude, that's fine. So I think it was. I think there was enough grounding for me that I could. It's like sort of standing on a rock in the middle of a stream, and I could sort of. I was nice and safe on my real stuff, and I could dip my toe in the weird magical stuff, and that's okay. But I still had my safe rock to stand on.
Mm-hmm. And I think also the things that she chose to make magical and weird are the kinds of things that certain people that you meet throughout their lives will tell you these stories and they believe with 100% conviction, and you just sort of accept. Like if someone was like, oh, I used to dive at this place my whole life and then one day it was just a shipwreck, like that feels like a real story that could happen, right, in real life. Or even the story of, you know what's weird, after my mom died, I like had this, I don't know if it was a dream or a hallucination or what, but I had this thing where like I called her on the phone, and I remember when I was 8 having a memory of my mom receiving that call. It'd be like, that's weird and you're a little crazy, but you understand it. Like you understand that this is the kind of things that, the kind of magical thinking that we're all prone to, that someone would say. So the idea of whether or not this is like some magic or some like primal goddess power or actual time jumping or just the magical thinking that someone does when they're grief-stricken, doesn't matter. Which just seems really smart for the author to play in that gray zone of the kind of magical thinking that we accept in our own lives, and tolerate when people tell us, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you don't, because sometimes, not to me really, but you can imagine that people have strange experiences that might be imagined, might be real, might be part of some grand sort of conspiracy or some grand sort of afterlife type thing, and you can understand that, and you can accept that, and so yeah, you can see that these sort of thing, you sort of went along with it. You think, oh yeah, I could imagine somebody having that sort of experience.
Yeah, it's a super smart place to live, especially when she draws it out for you in a way that isn't like she's putting you in the point of view of the person who then tells that story at the bar, that when they tell it at the bar, they give you just like the bones of it. But here you're seeing her watch the pots falling and the primal goddess swim towards her. And when you put yourself in those shoes, it seems really magical. But when you hear the soundbite of it, it's still magical, but you can almost sort of dismiss it. You know what I mean? Like it can exist in both places.
She only thought it was the primal goddess swimming towards her. It was just a old diver. She was the primal goddess, Anais. She was the one who transcended the time and just saw an ancestor.
So I
submit to you.
You think that there's an actual, they just said that the only other female free diver in this village is her cousin. And you think her cousin running around.
No. The lady she saw, the ghost lady, was just a normal lady from 1,000 years ago. She's the one who went back in time.
I see.
I say. That's my.
Okay. And then she brought the shipwreck with her.
And she brought the shipwreck with her.
That's pretty cool. But again, if you were going to ground this in reality, in the way that you can, given the facts that the author has given you, it's just, for whatever reason, no one dove down deep enough in this particular area to discover shipwreck before this woman.
Yeah, she drove down there all the time, man.
Right, but you know, the ocean is mysterious.
Yeah,
like
but
the story written in a very mysterious way. I liked it. I like that effect.
I like, though, that like her and her husband made fun of the people who are writing it off as the ocean is mysterious. Like, no, like this legitimately couldn't have happened. Like they don't know they'll just write it off as the ocean is mysterious. Like this could not. This is an impossible thing.
Yeah. Also, can we talk real quick about impossible things? Just in general, if you've ever gone snorkeling and you're like, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to dive underneath and hold my breath with your little flippers on, you get down maybe 3-4 meters and you're like panicking immediately. These people go down 30 meters, like barely go down past. I mean, I'm like still very shallow and I'm already feeling the pressure coming in on my head and my ears after just like a few meters and I want to die. How do they do it? And then you come up in a panic. She's like, oh, she's never come up in a panic before. I'm like, how? I come up in a panic because I'm in a pool. Like, what are you talking about?
She dives every day. She does this stuff.
Yeah.
I know. But free dive is wild, man. It's extremely dangerous. So dangerous. Yeah.
No, I had the same thing when I was trying to do Eskimo rolls in a kayak. And I practiced and I knew exactly what I should be doing. And as soon as I tipped it over, all hell broke loose because I'm drowning, for God's sake. So, yeah, it takes a little while to get that.
Yeah. And did you know, so I started looking up, like, trying to see if this was modeled on any particular shipwreck, and I don't think it is modeled on any particular one, because there's just, like, hundreds of these along the Mediterranean coast, so much so that, I think it was earlier this year or last year, Greece opened up a lot of these shipwrecks to scuba divers as underwater museums. You can go there now, part of your tourism. There's so many of them. That's a cool thing.
Or just free dive down there.
Or just free dive down there like a maniac. I don't think they're going to encourage that. Free divers die. Like, this is extremely dangerous.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to look up what would the apnea part, because the only apnea I know is sleep apnea, but this is I suppose it's to do with sleep apnea is where you can't breathe, so it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? I suppose that's what it is.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about how this plays with time. I like the idea that in their house there's only a rotary phone, but people are asking for pictures over email. So it's like, when does the story take place? Or is it just that she and her husband refuse to catch up with the modern world, but this whole village is a little bit behind?
But like villages are behind.
Yeah, but this is like super behind.
Well, but that's a fact of villages.
Yeah.
Well, they have an internet. And internet.
And internet. They've got the one.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was really effective, because if you're going to have this ageless, end-of-the-line, primal diving goddess person living anywhere, you can't have her in, like, Athens. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be, you know, this sleepy, sea-dependent village.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'd have to have her with a rotary phone and no internet and all that sort of stuff. It's somebody who's sort of not in the mainstream of modern life. There's you know, they go diving every day. They gather whatever it is, they gather the stuff and things, and then
urchins and
urchins, street urchins, sea urchins, and so so yeah.
She's
so
come up with Oliver Twist.
So they know. Well, you said there was a time element. So it suits that are obviously outside of the mainstream of life, is what I'm saying again. Yeah.
And it's funny because you mentioned earlier in the discussion, Gerald, that you were wondering, are they mermaids? Are they people? And it's funny because by the end of it, I was more convinced than ever that she's a mermaid. She's the closest thing we have to a mermaid.
Yeah.
And then I started looking at pictures of free divers, and they're just so beautiful, all those shots.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of things that are beautiful, one of the things that I really liked about the story that I keep hinting at, but we haven't gotten into enough, is how effective the author is at creating a mood. I felt like I was underwater for most of it. It felt very mysterious. It felt very powerful. I felt like I was in the ocean, which was awesome. And she was really good at painting pictures in my head. It's funny because I read some review where some guy was like, the purple bros. I'm like, what are you talking about? I couldn't disagree more. Like, info dumps. I'm like, are those just like two critical words that you've latched onto and drop into every review, random angry person? Because I thought it was extremely effective. Yeah.
Some guys are just dumb.
Yeah, I mean, it's only purple if it draws attention to itself. Like,
right.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. It was beautifully described, and I think them and their actions and their dialogue, which was short and simple, put you in mind of a very sort of simple lifestyle. There was nothing involved or complicated about how they talk to each other. It's just small sentences, and that just added to the sort of feeling and the picture that she painted.
I always like when a short story changes the style of the picture drawn in my head. So I've said this in a few other stories, and a lot of stories don't do this. So a lot of times when I'm picturing a story, it looks like life. But when I get a story, like when we read The Kitchen Child, Angela Carter, I believe, it looked like a cartoon to me. In my head, it was like a Betty Boop cartoon, like that, like style with like no angles and like bendy legs, where everyone's like bouncing around, because that's how the story felt. Or when a story is like really effectively noir, it's in black and white now, right? So this one was like with this like bluish hazy kind of tint, like one of those like low saturation, lots of blue Instagram filters. Like that's how it looked in my head the whole time. And when an author can do that through the descriptive mastery, like that's really effective. So, I mean, any aspiring writers, just like, how did she do that? How did she make it look a certain way in my head? Even when we weren't underwater, even when it's just like you're having me picture the archaeologists go in, or Alina and all the women on the pier drinking and just having a good time laughing. Yeah, like you maintain that style. That's really effective. Andy, can you, since you've been nodding your head, can you name a part where you felt like she painted a really nice picture in your brain?
No.
What? You didn't picture it?
No, I pictured the whole thing, but that's my thing with this story. I'm having a real hard time picking out a part. That's kind of what I meant about her keeping the reader on the back foot the whole time. It's like the whole thing just flows into each other, and then now the story's over. But it's, I don't know. I don't know many parts. I've read it a couple times.
That's a lie. You know how I know that's a lie? Because when I was reading the summary, you interrupted me to say, no, what about the ghost jars? So clearly the ghost jars were painted.
Because that's an important part.
So you can pick out parts.
Oh, are they jellyfish? Are they jars? And then they go. But they're not, I know. But it's the ghost jars connect directly to the shipwreck, which connects to the ghost lady, which connects to the everything else.
Gerald, can you pick out a part that we did really well in your mind?
Not off the top of my head, no. There was a bit I was just reading. It's just one bit before they get to Goat's Head. Yorgos knew better than to say anything in response. Sana was usually half dead when she came out of the water. The depth of 25 or even 15 meters made the diver's ears roar. See, that's quite nice. She had damaged her eardrums like most free divers before she was even 10 years old. He simply nodded. Next stop, she said. It's just very simple. She's giving you some information. She's painting a bit more of the picture. She's colouring in some of the bits that she's missed on that character. I just love the way that she did that. She, Alexandra.
Yeah. The three big ghost parts stuck out for me. Well, the very beginning, where she's just sitting in a boat and it explains the sky above and the water below and how she's between the two. I love that. Also, the ghost jars were painted really effectively for me. And then when she's on the pier and she's watching her grandmother and her mother, when her mother was first pregnant with her, walking along the coast, that was painted very effectively for me. And then her mother in the kitchen looking surprised, like she's talking to a ghost for the future, when her mother picks up the phone and it's her somehow adult daughter on the end of the line, and she has that 8-year-old memory, that like that was a snapshot in my brain as well. Very effective.
You know what? The green phone stuck out for me. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because it was green.
Like the color green was jarring of the phone, but I couldn't tell you why. It's like, oh, it's a green phone.
But it's such a subtle and effective thing where it's like, if you don't add that green, it tells your brain, like they'll just think about craft. This is not an important detail. But now that you just added that green, just that one word, your brain now goes, oh, remember this green phone? All of a sudden it matters. And to do that so simply, and then she does it first without explaining to you the significance of the phone. Then later she explains it was the 5 numbers before you had to dial the area code that she would call all the time. It was her like distress signal when she needed parents when she was a kid, right? When she needed her mother's attention. Also, one of the things that I love about the story is the fathers don't matter. Like the pure matriarchal lines, very funny to me.
Well,
that men don't matter. Yorgo matters, right? Like there are men in the story who have an important role.
Yeah. But I think it's just like the boatmen all have their own whole different stories they tell, but we're not. It's not this story. They're doing their own thing. And there's
a moment of that, right, where it's the version that the free diving women tell of the primal goddess is completely different than the version that the boatmen have. For the boatmen, it's like, the chupacabra, like it's like this like evil in the water that will kill your wives. And for the women, it's like this goddess who brings bounty.
There was a couple of things that a little bit to do with the ending, where I highlighted this when she went to email the photos of the neighbor next door, and the next door neighbor said this discovery will change the town forever. And then about a page or so on, yes, someone from the town said, your town won't be the same after this. And I thought, oh, what's going to happen? But actually, what she did really well because was saying nothing happened, because right at the end, after she made the phone call, she could hear Yorgos walking out to their truck, gathering her grief. She moved to get her fins. So nothing changed in their life. Yes, the town had changed and loads of people had come in and they're investigating this, but they, as a couple of characters, were just carrying on with their life, which I thought was there was a sort of almost like a flag to say the town's going to change, which it did, but they didn't change. So again, it's sort of echoing the rotary phone, because their life is fixed.
And when they're all in the pier, there was a line also where the author notes that even though people are pouring into the town now, all the archaeologists and the journalists, the women who live there year round, they're not talking about that. They're not talking about the wreck, except the younger women are talking about all like the who were coming in, and that's it, right? Which I liked. I like that. Just like how then the local village gossip is still the most important thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else we want to add, or are we ready to rate?
Oh, geez. Right.
I can go first.
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay, it's a 6 for me. And how I say 6 is as I was reading the story, I paused partway through to tell a friend of mine, "Ooh, I'm reading a really mysterious story you would like." So it's a 6.
Yeah, it's a 6 for me. I can't think of why it wouldn't be a 6, because it resonated. It was enjoyable to read. There were some interesting aspects to it and strange aspects, and it's something I know nothing about, but I felt like I knew a lot more about it at the end through what the characters did. So yeah, it's a 6.
Okay.
So, in the interest of full disclosure, as this story was indeed suggested by my girlfriend, there are complex social pressures upon me to rate this.
Especially now that we've rated it at 6.
But I also feel like Karina in particular would be more upset by me not discussing it fully than by giving it a rating she feels would be undeserved. So I feel like that has been served. I think I want to give it a 5, which is a very good score.
Yes,
but
you keep telling us.
There were no rum distillery effluent powered zeppelins in this story. There were ghost ships, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, add a zeppelin, it gets a 6. That's all I'm saying. Right now, a good 5.
Nice.
Oh boy, are you in trouble?
So it is game time, and I got a shipwreck facts, so we're not going to do that. But before I explain the game, what are you guys submitting?
Well, as mentioned earlier, I'm going back to Carve magazine, which I do occasionally, and I'm putting forward The Enchanted Forest by Brian Crawford.
Okay.
I will be submitting Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God by Joyce Carol Oates.
Oh.
Yes. All right. I already have a favorite. Okay. Now, I mean, you know what? No, we're trying to read widely and not just read Joyce Carol Oates.
It's anybody's game.
Anybody's game, guys. Anybody's game. So, remember when we did Battleship? Like a few
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
That's not a good start.
I've got a grid over the ocean, and in the ocean, this Mediterranean coast, I've got a bunch of different shipwrecks. You're each going to get 5 tries to find a shipwreck, and whoever has the most shipwrecks at the end of 5 tries wins. Or, I have a question that first tiebreaker. So it's A through F, 1 through 6. So A1, D4, whatever. And then I will tell you whether or not you found a shipwreck, and we'll bring fortune to your village. or whether you suck at this and you're not a primal goddess. Okay.
Yeah.
So you each get 5 tries. So Andy?
C3.
Yes, you got a shipwreck. Woo! Gerald?
So are they like individual small shipwrecks? You don't.
Yep. I have just a bunch, individual ones. Yep.
Okay. F2.
Yes, tied. Andy?
Whoa.
That's some good shipwreck finding, Gerald. A1.
Nope.
No, I'm gonna go D5.
D5. Nope.
A6.
Yes, A6. Okay.
Wow.
Gerald?
B4.
B4. Yes. Oh my goodness, you guys, neck and neck. Andy?
F1.
No, nothing.
Yeah, it's not gonna. C3.
That was Andy's first guess. Do another tile.
Oh, okay, sorry. C6.
Yes. My goodness. Gerald will lead. Andy's last guess.
F6.
F6. Nothing. So I think this means Gerald wins no matter what. But if you want to show off, Gerald, find another shipwreck.
Yeah, sure. E4.
E4. Nothing. But Gerald found 3 shipwrecks. Andy found 2. Gerald is our primal freediving goddess.
Woohoo!
Woo! So Gerald, what are we reading next week?
We'll be reading The Enchanted Forest by Brian Crawford.
Okay. Before you go, dive into our section in our Facebook group, Literary Roadhouse Readers, or on Twitter at LitRoadhouse, or our website, LiteraryRoadhouse.com. Leave your thoughts for posterity for future generations of more wisdom. If this story made you want to read more magical realism, join the Literary Roadhouse Book Club, where we discuss a novel each month. And lastly, we're going scuba diving in Greece's underwater museums. Support our literary tourism and our podcast expenses at patreon.com/literaryrroadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the free diving primal goddesses enriching your life. Until next time, read a good story.
Yay!